guys, what's up? I am joined here with David Newberry. David has been my barber now. It's probably a year and a half, going on 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going on about a year and a half, I believe.
Yeah. And this guy, so if you ever want a fresh cut, they give you the hot shave. Like he's the go-to guy. But over the course of this year and a half or so, when we talk, like it's in a public setting, so we don't want to get too personal. But yeah, you keep telling me the little bits and pieces of your story, and I'm like, dude, this is incredible. Like, and you were just starting to tell me some of it, and I didn't know all these details, and I'm like, dude, like this is incredible. Like, we're gonna stop this. I'm gonna hit record, and I want you to tell this story because, David, statistically speaking, like I told him, I said you should probably be laying in a gutter somewhere, like high on drugs, like getting ready to commit suicide. With that being said, I'm ready to let's jump in, and I want because my first question before I even hit record was, tell me what age you stopped going to school, and you said, well, started in kindergarten. And so I want to hear this story now from start to finish. Let's roll with it. I might stop and ask you some few questions, but David, introduce yourself. How old are you? Where are you from? And how did this all get started?
Sure. I'm David Newberry. I'm 30. I'll be 31 at the end of March here. I'm a barber in Mattoon, Illinois. I live in Effingham, Illinois. And I'm originally from Neoga. But that being said, my mom's originally from Florida. So I spent my early childhood in Florida till about 8 or 9. And then came back up to Neoga and been in the area ever since.
Nice. So, when we started talking, I had asked that question, like, when did you stop going to school? And now enlighten people on some of the story, because I didn't know about this early childhood stuff. Said it started when you're in kindergarten.
Yeah. So like we've talked, in the shop, so as far as a formal education goes, one didn't really exist because, yeah, I never completed kindergarten even. So I was about halfway through kindergarten, and we lived in Florida. Florida's, it's real humid stuff, and I have asthma, have my whole life, and I started having a bunch of attacks, like mostly on recess and stuff like PE. And it got to the point where the staff had to keep a nebulizer at the school for me. Well, then it got to the point where I was having so many in a row that I had to spend almost 3 months in a children's hospital in Dade City, Florida.
That's cool.
Because I caught pneumonia so many times, my lungs were starting to scar. So it was just kind of difficult for me to, just breathe Florida air in general.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was missing so much school that my parents just withdrew me, just took me out of it, and were going to homeschool me. And then my brother, who was perfectly healthy, I don't know if it was just so that we were on the same level or what, or make it easier on us, but they took him out of school as well, and they were going to homeschool him. And then right at the beginning of us starting to do our homeschooling, my dad, who was a licensed cosmetologist, who worked with my mom, they owned a shop in Florida. They weren't as busy in Florida as they were in Illinois because they both cut hair up here. So he took a part-time job driving a forklift at a metal factory, and he got into a forklift accident and actually ended up breaking his spine. And from that, he was completely paralyzed from the waist, or almost from the neck down at that point. And they also then discovered he had MS, which is multiple sclerosis. So he was in a bad shape. And then from that, he was never like super skinny, but he wasn't like obese. Yeah. He was just like a big dude. And but from being bedbound, he put on a lot of weight. And then from there came diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, all this other stuff. But that's in the future. But at this point, though, he's bedbound, and mom has to take a step back from the salon to take care of him. So that kind of derailed our homeschooling.
How old were you at this point? Were you still in kindergarten at this point?
Yeah, at this point I would have been like 5, maybe 6, just turned 6 around that time. So it would have been like 95, 96-ish. And so then they decided to move back to Illinois, back to the Cumberland County where they were, because they had a farm up there. And so they moved back for some, there was a doctor my dad wanted to go to, like I guess a previous family doctor or something like that. And when we moved back, we got another little farm right inside of Cumberland. And my mom didn't do hair anymore. She had sold all her stuff, her shop in Florida. So she took a management position as the manager of the Neoga Casey's. And so me and my brother were just home all day, all morning with our dad. We were like his in-home staff. We'd have to, we'd feed him, get his drinks, and just help him, And
were you doing any education at this point?
No, no education. The History Channel. Me and my brother, for some reason, we loved the History Channel.
No kidding.
So we would just watch the History Channel all day long in our dad's room while he was laid on the bed, and just wait for him if he needed, whatever he needed help with.
Yeah.
And so then at one point, though, my mom, she gets robbed and attacked at Casey's. She was the manager, so she got there at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to set everything up. And one morning, there was someone there waiting for her to get there, someone that knew she was going to be there and alone. And she was attacked and, just kind of brutalized. And that kind of messed her up mentally for a while.
Yeah.
She couldn't leave the house. She couldn't be around strangers, and she had a phobia of men. Like really? if the mailman was at the door, she'd freak out. She'd run to the bedroom, lock the door.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty rough there. And so they never found her attacker or anything like that. The guy robbed, got a little bit of money, but no, they never, because there was no cameras in the store. There's actually cameras there now because of that.
It's crazy.
But so then because of that, though, any prospects of education kind of got turned out the water, because now, my brother and I, we have essentially two disabled parents. We have one physically disabled and one mentally disabled.
Wow.
At the moment. So somehow my dad worked out this deal with a truck stop that's no longer standing. It's just an empty lot now, but it was there in Neoga, and where he kind of got his name on a time card as an employee under the table. And me and my brother went and did the work, and it was third shift. So it was 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. And we did that 7 days a week.
Wait, and how old were you at this point?
So at this point, I was just about to turn 11. I was 10, going on 11. Wow. And my brother was like 12, kind of going on 13. And we kind of just split, because we worked in the restaurant side, and it was open to the public. So, people would come in and order food, and he and I would go try to prepare it and,
really
kind of cook things and kind of learn. Yeah, exactly.
So you're 11, 12 years old. You guys are cooked at a truck stop.
Yeah, kind of standing barely above the grill, trying to figure out how to cook all this stuff. And
what kind of hours were you guys keeping at that job?
10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And see, so Mike, when we talk and I'm like, I'm not a morning person, this is why, because I did third shift till I was in my early 20s,
So how long did you work there?
I worked at that truck stop till it kind of went under. I worked there till I was 18.
That's crazy. So still no education to speak
No
of.
Education at this point. No, never went to school or anything. And honestly, at this point, I kind of had a negative self-image. I really didn't think I could go to school at this point because I had several friends, and it was very clear that there was an educational gap, just from hanging out with them. It was just clear they just could spell better. Yeah. They were better at math.
So History Channel couldn't do everything for you.
History Channel did not do everything for me. It left a few little gaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but did you know how to read and stuff?
Yeah. So I do know how to read.
Did you know how to read back then?
I'm not the best speller. A little bit, yeah. Just I kind of taught myself how to read, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Just because when we were up there at third shift a lot, there was a lot of times, 2 to 5 in the morning, no one's coming in. all, we're kids, all our work's done. So we just go over to the other side and we grab comic books or magazines, and all the time I just kind of skip a word you didn't know and just keep on until eventually kind of sound it out and get it.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I can read just fine. I will admit I am not the best speller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone has a crazy last name at the shop. I'm like, can you spell that for me? How do you spell your last name?
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, we're only to where you're 18, but still, like, when I speak to you, I'm like, I didn't know all this stuff. But even when I talk to him, I'm like, dude, his vocabulary, I think the first time I'm in there, I'm like, he uses words I don't even know what they mean. So, I mean, I would have never in my life guessed that you had such a lack of formal education, because to me, like, you're only 30, but you're well wise beyond your years. And the way you speak, and I'm like, this dude is like so intelligent. Like, you make me feel dumb sometimes.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I will say, as far as being, I will say, just mature beyond years, that kind of comes from, I never went to daycare, and I was never really around other kids. I was always around adults when I was a kid. Even at the truck stop, there was other adult staff on the other side. We'd hang out. There'd be truck drivers that would come in that were regulars that knew us, kind of knew our situation, and they. So I kind of had also too, it kind of gave me a little bit of a sailor mouth, being around truck drivers when you're that age,
Oh yeah, pretty impressionable age.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, and because of that, though, I've just always usually had older friends, and like I'd go to a job or something. It was usually the guys who are 5 or 10 years older than me that I was able to joke around with and connect with, because the guys my own age had traditional upbringings, and I just didn't have a lot in common with them. And because of that, though, too, being I don't know what the right word, kind of isolated. Like, we grew up listening to like 70s music, watching all the old cartoons like Johnny Quest and stuff on TV, because that's what my dad was like. So when I'd had no appreciation for the things of that was my generation, I guess, when I was younger.
Yeah.
Just because I just wasn't really exposed to it, and didn't have any, like I said, around other kids that were like, pushing you one way or the other. So
yeah,
it was kind of weird, when I'm at the barbershop and someone's in their 40s and they're talking about Led Zeppelin, and it's like, oh yeah, I can name this song or this concert, or when they're, because that's just the stuff that I grew up listening to. So
cool.
It was a very odd childhood.
Yeah. So once you turned 18 or you quit there, what was next? What was your next step?
Well, what happened before that was just, if we're just counting, life events, when my mom got robbed and all that stuff, and we were working at this truck stop, she couldn't work anymore. And she was trying to get, I don't know exactly what it was, like a I don't know if it was like a settlement or disability or something from Casey's, because they didn't have cameras and stuff. But you know how all that stuff goes. It takes, 6 months just to get the paperwork. So we ended up losing our farm that we had. And at this point, it looked pretty grim. We didn't really have any money. So we had to go to the trailer park in Neoga. So yet again, my dad, when he was on his feet, he was one of these guys that could just wheel and deal, and you never knew. He's always trading and doing stuff. And he bought a trailer in the trailer park for cash for $750.
Really?
I know a lot of people's first car that cost more than $750.
Yeah.
Let alone a home for a family of 4.
Yeah.
So this trailer in the trailer park, it was completely gutted on the inside. It had no walls. It had plumbing and electricity, stuff like that. But like, as far back as the bedroom side of things went, there was no walls. It had just 2x4s exposed,
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to go and get just like thrift store kind of like blankets and stuff, and kind of tack them up. And that was kind of how we sectioned off and had a little privacy in our rooms and stuff.
No.
And then we were there from, I think, till I was about 12 or 13 till I was about 14. And then we got a house, eventually was able to get a house in Neoga. But at this point too, yeah, me and my brother, we were the ones, paying the bills for everything because we were the ones that would go to work and pay the lot rent, the utilities, and stuff like that. And and then also too, we fed the family from food
Yeah.
from the truck stop because we'd leave, we'd cook a bunch of food and take it in our to-go containers, and that was lunch, dinner, whatever.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Dude, you guys deserve so much credit, you and your brother. I mean, yeah, you're the two of you from 10 to however old are supporting your family. Like,
yeah.
dude, that's incredible.
It's
And
kind
you
of
probably
weird.
didn't even know it at the time or even understand, did you?
When you're that old, things just kind of feel normal,
Yeah.
like if I look at it right now, my daughter is 11 and she acts like she has no idea what she's doing when I ask her to change the trash.
Yeah.
And it's like I couldn't imagine her around hot grills and deep fryers and truck
No
drivers
kidding.
alone at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, but when you're that age, it doesn't feel like something weird. It just feels like just normal.
Yeah,
Your brain kind of has a way of making things just kind of normal.
for sure.
It wasn't until I actually moved into that trailer park is when I met a few friends who are still friends with me today. And that was some of the first times where I started to kind of see my lack of education kind of like, I mean, compared to someone who had gone through school
Yeah.
and stuff. So that was kind of like when I first kind of started to get that kind of like a little bit of a negative image for myself and kind of feel a little subpar.
Yeah. So like as a kid growing up, working those strange hours, what did you do as a kid? Did you have a childhood where you were running around playing, or did you do anything like that?
Not really. I mean, so from working till 6 o'clock in the morning, we would sleep till we get home and go to bed. We'd sleep till 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So, and that was just to get our regular 8 hours, sleep. So, by the time we woke up, school was maybe just getting out. So we had a few friends, we'd walk around with, or, hang out with a little bit or something, play some video games. But as far as a ton of sleepovers and stuff, it really didn't, that wasn't a lot of that because, we were working.
Yeah, for sure.
And we kind of knew that we weren't supposed to be. So like when we would tell our friends, like, hey, don't tell your parents that, we're working, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't want someone to, I guess, come take us away or something. So
for sure. Man, yeah. That's just crazy. That's crazy. I mean, that's so cool of you. I mean, at a young age, you obviously didn't necessarily understand what you were doing, but now looking back at it, do you think you supported your mom and dad through that, and you and your brother at that young of age, like that's incredible, man. Good on you.
Yeah, it was definitely weird, and it's definitely weird looking back on it now since I've been like working full time since such a young age. Like I'm ready for retirement. Like I've already put in my 20 years.
No kidding.
Yeah. Because like when I remember we had friends that were 17, 18 who were getting their first job. And we, kind of joke around with them, being like, oh, just now getting to work, huh, hippie, and and looking back on it, though, that's very normal. Like that's how it should be.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, in your household, like some of these questions I'll ask, maybe they're personal, I don't know, but you don't have to answer them. But like, when you're that young, was there any like drugs or alcohol or anything like that?
So not from my parents. They were both, they didn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
They had my dad had health issues, so I never remember even really seeing my dad drink or anything like that. But my sister, on the other hand, my sister is 11 years older than me.
Oh, really?
And so she's 40, she'll be 42, I think, this July. And she kind of got off the beaten path a little bit. She got together for my first brother-in-law, her first husband. And they were, alcoholics, and they did drugs, and they had 2 kids, my niece and nephew, and they were, primarily at our house a lot and stuff. And so that's another thing too. My niece, me and my brother, we were her primary daycare provider at like 11, 12,
Yeah.
and
That's
she was a
crazy.
little baby, So we kind of watched her a lot there for several years. We kind of took
Mhm.
care of her, which is probably why she's not normal now too. No, she's doing great. But yeah. So and my sister, she's well clean now, has been for several years.
Actually, good.
But
Good.
yeah, but she did get off the beaten path there for a little bit. And honestly, she was kind of a role model for me and my brother a little bit because we thought she was fun and she was cool. Because we kind of lived in a kind of a dark environment for a little bit. Dad was
Yeah.
bedbound and mom was kind of a little shaky and stuff. She kind of would just hang out in the corner and get the breeze would blow something past the yard and she'd freak out like, what was that,
Really,
because she was
man.
just scared. And so yeah, so we eventually my sister ended up moving into that same trailer park on the other end. So when we would wake up, we'd spend our days over there. We'd walk over to my sister's trailer just to get out of ours. And my sister's place, looking back on it, was just horrible. I mean, there's cockroaches going up the sides of the wall.
Really? Oh, wow.
I smoked pot for the first time at 11 years old because my sister allowed me to.
Really? Yeah.
We were drinking beers and stuff. It just was not a good environment. But that stuff it can be fun.
Yeah.
And so especially when you're
Oh,
young
yeah.
like that, especially
Young
when
and
you're also kind of
impressionable.
look impressionable and kind of looking for an escape from working and taking care of your sick parents.
Yeah.
So we'd go over there and play video games and drink beer and all kinds of stuff. And it kind of just kind of getting worse and worse, and then there was some abuse problems going on between my brother-in-law and my sister,
Hmm.
so that kind of we'd leave, or something, and then they kind of my sister would be like, hey, don't tell mom this or that or
Yeah.
something. And it was just kind of a dark situation, and that went on well into my adulthood. Like I said, she's just been clean now for a couple of years,
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
it
she
could
was
have.
a good role model and a bad role model is what you didn't want to emulate.
That's actually exactly how that turned out. Because when that truck stop closed down, I was in my teens, and I went to work at a factory over in T Town. I was 16 or about to be 17. And yeah, I was just about to be 17. And I went to this paper factory in T Town called 3Z's. And yet again, it was third shift. I was very familiar with that. So that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
So worked third shift. And that was my first time kind of seeing being around a lot of other people and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And then I don't remember really why, but me and my brother, we both got really into like lifting weights. So we um and my dad, when in his younger age, was like that. He was a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. So he had all this home equipment stuff that kind of just went move to move with us,
Mhm.
but never got used. And when we got into the house in Neoga, we set it up, me and my brother, and we started using it all the time. And then when we were working over in T Town, we went to this gym over there in Effingham called Draves, and we started working out all the time. And that was really the first time when I started to feel kind of good about myself because I kind of started to see some positive change. I like
Yeah.
where my body was going, and I stopped smoking pot. I stopped drinking beer like regularly like that.
Yeah.
And because I found that when I would go in there, if I had done any of that, I was sluggish, my workouts weren't good,
For
and stuff
sure.
like that. So that was when me and my brother and my sister started to kind of part ways a little because they were still doing that stuff and
Hmm.
then and harder stuff. And me and my brother had started kind of for whatever reason fell into working out. And it is, and then watching my sister's life kind of she was the manager of a Big Lots in Edwardsville or Granite City, somewhere in that area. And but just watching her her bad decisions kind of make them kind of lose houses and cars and jobs and stuff
Hmm.
like that was kind of like I don't want that to be for me. I don't want anything like that. And my mom and dad though were just like the nicest people on the planet, especially my dad. And so another thing that was weird, when we got this big house in Neoga, we always had someone living with us that was not a family member.
Really?
Always. We're talking like legitimate homeless people. There was a lady one time that just showed up at our doorstep wanting to know if she could like get a ride, and my dad let her live with us for like 2 years.
Really? That's
Yeah.
so crazy.
And my dad was a very big Christian. So he was always, if someone showed up at the door, he was like, God sent them for me to share the word, and that's what's going to happen. So
No kidding. That's crazy.
Every time someone would come, like I said, there was at one point we had a whole family living with us.
Really?
Yeah. So we were always at that time too, I was kind of an angry youth because of just the way I had grown up. So, I was always out of the house. I never wanted to be around strangers and, stuff like that. So I moved out when I was 17. And because I didn't like the way, my sister was always in and out. And when she was there, she'd cause trouble or steal a bunch of stuff and leave. And it was back 3 months later. A bunch of drama. There was always some random person sleeping somewhere. So I was like, no, this isn't for me. So, I left at 17 and I moved, me and my, what is my ex-fiance now, had got a apartment in Effingham. And then we, were together. But then I think it was only like maybe 6 weeks into living on our own, she was surprise pregnant.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And I was 18. And what's funny is my birthday is March 28th. And my daughter's birthday is April 16th. So literally just a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later. And I had just turned 19 and then she was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So there was and from that moment too, there was no, we never moved back in with our parents or anything. We always had our own place and stuff. And that was hard too, because there was plenty of times in those moments where I was like, I really felt like, I want to try to go to school for something, because I was just bouncing from an entry level job to an entry level job, working there till I didn't like it or didn't get along with management or whatever the case may be. And I just felt like, I want a little bit more out of that. But for some reason, not for some reason, when you're young and you have a kid and then, there's bills to pay, finding the time to go back to school. And for me,
it's a lot easier to find excuses in that situation.
It is. Well, and the thing was, for me, though, it wasn't like how when some people say, oh, I'm going back to school, that means usually, oh, okay, so you're going to finish college finally. For me, I was starting from the ground up. I was getting like 6th grade math, books at Walmart, and being like, okay, I need to go back to school. I needed to have like, start from the base of a normal education, then work my way up to a college education. So that was it just felt like a bigger mountain to climb.
Yeah. So you were still able to juggle that. You're still able to, still keep.
But what happened was, I ended up working at Donley's in Mattoon, R&R Donley's, the paper factory. And if anyone listening had ever worked there or know anyone who worked there in the Mattoon area, it was a hard job. They worked a lot of overtime. You worked 12-hour shifts, 5-6 days a week. Sometimes I think I worked like 12 or 11 or 12 days in a row one time with 12-hour shifts. I worked second shift at that time. So I worked 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was just a hard job. It was monotonous. You just went in, you did the same thing over and over again. The aesthetics of the place reminded me of like a prison. Everything was just stone and just like, chain link and dusty. So that was my final inspiration. One time I called my brother on a lunch break. I was almost in tears. I was like, I can't work here anymore. I was like, it was like $50 to register for a GED test. So I was in between the paychecks. We were living paycheck to paycheck. So I called him. I was like, hey man, can I borrow $50 from you to register for this test? I got to get out of here. I got to do something better, And he was going to school. He was going to EIU. He's smarter than me. I'll say that. He just like he liked learning.
Yeah.
So he always was just better. He went to Lakeland and stuff very early. Wasn't great at it, but stuck with it and kind of built himself up. And he's an RN right now. He's a registered nurse.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, we both kind of, from the same background. He did very well. Took him a long time to get there, but he bounced around from several different degrees. He's actually got his HVAC certification and stuff, and so he's tried out different things.
Yeah.
We both had pretty low goals for ourselves, just because that was kind of the story we had told ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I borrowed the money from him, and I registered for a GED test, and I had never taken a test really before, and I was like, I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna bomb. And I spent I think it was a couple of weeks in advance. I spent the next couple of weeks trying to study different books and stuff, mostly just praying. I was like, let me pass this test.
Yeah.
So I go to this adult education center and take the test. And the test, it's really weird how they do it. It's on points, and there's 5 categories, and there's a line in the middle of this paper, and you have to get every category point wise past this line. And you can have one or the other kind of right at the line, as long as another category is way up.
Mm-hmm.
So what actually saved me was my history.
No
I got
kidding?
100% on my history.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and my social studies, because it was all on human, just stuff like that. So my social studies, my history was 100%. So then my spelling and my math were just right on that line. But because the other two had so many points, they could compensate and take points from the other,
Really?
So I was able to get my GED on the first try. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
So thank you, History Channel, actually. Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
So so after I passed that, I kind of set on it for a little bit, because I was like, all right, that was my first step. So then I went to work at the Home Depot, and because it was part-time, and I was like, I'm going to do this so that I can have time to go to school. Well, then my fiance at the time, she got a full-time job that was a pretty good job. And between her going back to work, we were able to kind of live in our normal. So I didn't go back to school for a while. So we ended up moving back. Me and my fiance were kind of we were rocky. We got together really, you heard the first part of that. We got together really young. She got pregnant really fast. We had pretty much struggled our entire relationship. So with just, bills and things, and trying to figure out life. She didn't complete. Yeah, she didn't complete school either, or high school, but not college.
Yeah.
And so we had an opportunity to buy her mom's house in Neoga. And we went there, and we only ended up living there a year before we broke up. Just because I think we just got together too young and just kind of grew apart. And so when we broke up, though, it was her mom's house we were buying it off contract. So like a verbal contract. Yeah. So there was really no questioning on who was going to stay there. So I packed my stuff, and me and my brother, who had just got back from EIU and had to move back into my mom and dad's house in Neoga, where there was a bunch of people living there at the time, random people. He didn't like that situation. So we got a place in Mattoon together. And it was that moment where I was like, okay, I'm finally going back to school. I was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm not going to have everything be the same, except for just not be with the family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and like I said earlier, both of my parents were cosmetologists, and they owned a salon in Mattoon called the Hair Company. And they owned one in Florida. And during those times, especially in Mattoon, they did very well for themselves. Mm-hmm. So I talked to them a little bit, and they encouraged me to try it, because it wasn't something an office job I didn't want, or something like this or that. I was like, one of the few things I did get was that I could draw a little bit, and I like to use my hands. And kind of growing up from the truck stop, I like talking to people. Yeah. So I was like, what can I do, to kind of combine all these things? And so I tried cosmetology, and it was the best thing I ever did. I really liked doing it. I loved going to school. I was terrified. I had never gone to school, never been in a classroom. And not only that, but, when I went back to school, I was 26 years old. It was January, and I was going to turn 27 in that March. So about 3 months away, 4 months away, it was in the March from being 27. And I'm in Lakeland for the first time in the cosmetology class. I'm the only guy. And all the girls are 18, 19 years old, mostly, So it was just a weird, to go from, especially me being working in truck stops and factories, to go around some of these girls who had never, you know what I mean?
Oh, for
sure.
They're
just now getting out of the house for the first time. They haven't even heard some of the words that I would use. And it was definitely strange. But, I got along with the teachers. They knew my situation really well. And they would cut me some slack on some things like braiding and things that I kind of told them I wasn't going to be doing.
Yeah.
Which made some of the other classmates a little upset because their braids were definitely critiqued.
Yeah.
But and then I told them, I was like, I'm going to go to barber school after cosmetology. So they knew my focus was going to be on short haircuts and using clippers and stuff. So a lot of things like, we had to do nails and all kinds of stuff. And they just kind of, as long as my stuff wasn't complete garbage, they were just kind of like, okay, it passes.
Yeah.
And it was great because while I was there, I ended up meeting my fiance that I have now there. We've been together for 4 years, and we're actually getting married next January.
Nice.
So, kind of all worked out. And
Sure.
then after Lakeland, I had a swell of confidence because I did it with great grades. I got an A or B on almost every test, and like the actual written tests and stuff. And so then I was like, what, I can do this. I can go back to college for another time. So I went to barber school and did the same thing.
Yeah.
Went through it, completed all the tests, did the state boards and stuff. And so that's kind of like, if I had a message to anyone who was listening, no matter how old they are or anything, if you think you can't go back to school, trust me, you can. Yeah, no matter how old you are. If you have a formal education of any sort, you've got what it takes to go back to school and pursue whatever career that interests you.
Yeah.
Because if I can do it coming from that background, anyone can go for it, go back to school.
And what a good story from start to finish, because like I said, to start this, if you look at your life, you should probably be stuck in a gutter somewhere, like doing some drugs.
Yeah.
To see all these examples, your sister set the good example of being somebody cool, but then also as you got older, like, this is a bad example. I don't want to follow in those footsteps. And, you wanted success in your life, and now you're a barber. And, every time I speak with you, then you give me a few ideas that you're thinking about doing, or business ideas, or you want to go do this. And I'm like, this dude's going to do something special, and there's nothing wrong with cutting hair in Mattoon. If you stay there forever, that's fine. But I feel like the things that you're asking me about, I'm like, this dude's going places. And I'm like, dude, I respect you so much, and I honor you now hearing this whole story. Like, that's a deep story, man, and good for you. Because also, if anybody's ever went to a barber to get their hair cut, like, I know this guy spends so much detail in my hair that, like, I told my wife, I said, I'm never going anywhere else. Like, this is my dude. Like, I appreciate it that, you explain everything to me, because my hair is weird. It's got all that gray in it. It's weird, but every step of the way you're like explaining it to me. And I'm like, this guy's so knowledgeable on hair that, like, why wouldn't I keep going here?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well,
you're more than just a barber. You've got so much more to offer that's why I think that that's why I wanted to have you on here. Cause like, somebody's going to resonate with this story and be like, dude, if David can do that, why couldn't I do that?
Absolutely. And the thing is, though, like anything, so here I'm 30, and I tell you the truth, I feel like I've just now built a platform for me to start bigger things, like actual ambitious things,
For sure.
Because, for the first time in my life, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not waking up worrying about, well, if I go to McDonald's today for lunch, I'm not going to be able to eat tomorrow, or something like that. And like, so, and a big thing for that too is that, not to get too, deep or mushy, but, going back to just praying a lot and going back to God really changed my life, my brother's life, my fiance's life, because, you know, we were able to do some things that were kind of, you know, almost impossible. So, like, you remember when we bought a house in Effingham. For the first time in my life, you know, I bought a house, and you know, we bought that house technically unemployed during the
Oh
pandemic.
yeah.
Yeah, we bought it. We were unemployed, had no idea if we were going to have jobs, going to go back, when we were going to go back. There were some stipulations with me being self-employed that technically should have allowed us not to do it for another year. But just the way everything worked out, we were able to get the house we wanted, get it cheaper than what we wanted it, you know, and that was all just 100% God's timing, because there were
Yes.
several times in that process, because it took a while. You know, if you remember coming to get your haircut, being like, remember you asking, being like, you know, hey, you know, you guys liking your house yet? And I'll be just like, man, we're not even there yet. We're still in the paperwork phase.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how long? It
So,
was like a 10-month process, wasn't it? How
oh
long was
man,
it?
it took from May, March. It was from March till September. Yeah, it was a long time. It was the
No
whole
kidding.
spring, the whole summer, and then into the fall, before we, and then after we got it, then we had to do a bunch of other stuff we wanted to do to it. So we didn't actually end up moving into the house till December 14th.
Dude.
Like, we've only been in here for like 3 months.
Yeah. And it's so cool the way that all happened. 'Cause I remember you telling me this. You're like, had
Hmm.
we bought it had everything went through like it should have the first time, then we wouldn't have been able to do all this stuff. But then since everything
Exactly.
got messed up, you know, on God's time, not on our time, on God's time, you know,
That is,
you actually get it cheaper. You don't
yeah.
have to move in as soon as possible, and you can pay somebody because you have extra money you've been working
Uh-huh.
to get these things
Yeah.
done.
It's kind of crazy how that stuff works out. But yeah, and that was, you know, this house actually taught me a big lesson in just God's time, you know, because we get so busy, you know, with our timeline, you know, we
Yep.
kind of forget, you know, that God has his own timeline, and his time frame and ours are not the same,
Not the same.
because
His is always better, it seems like, you know?
it seems like his works out a little bit better. It seems like, you know, had we got it, like you said, had we got it when we wanted it, we would have paid so much, we probably couldn't have done some of the things we wanted to do. Or had they, you know, because a lot of, well, the way some of these things happened was it was kind of like mistakes on the bank's part.
Mm.
And had it happened soon and they caught those mistakes sooner, they probably just would have told us we had to wait another year. But because the process had gone so far and we'd already put money down, they were kind of like, you know, it's unusual, but we're going to go ahead and give it to you guys just because we've kind of put you guys out for a while.
Oh man,
And
that's crazy. Yeah, that doesn't
yeah,
typically happen.
no, you know, we had both of the real estate agent companies pay for the some part of the down payment for this.
No
That,
kidding.
I mean, that's how long the process took, and how, you know, everyone just wanted the deal to be done. So yeah, we had the real estate agencies paying for it, the bank paying for it. I mean, we walked in here for like a dream, you know, like
Yeah,
where there was going to have to be a ton.
that's awesome. Now,
Yeah.
growing
So,
up, like, where did you find your inspiration from even want more out of life? Was it prayer and God? Or was there anybody else you looked up to?
you know, honestly, I was kind of, I think part of the reason I was such a late bloomer is because I really didn't have a role model
Yeah.
in my personal life, like someone I knew. And all my role models that I had at that time were kind of just public figures that were kind of, you know, more angry than anything. Like, I related more to people who just, I think, like, felt the same emotions that I had,
Hmm.
instead of like the life that they wanted, you know. So
Yeah.
I was that classic kid listening to like angry rap and angry rock, and, you know, just reading, playing angry video games just because I was just
Yep.
kind of angry.
So that's probably when we first met, because obviously you've been cutting my hair for a while, but we
Yeah.
met. So with my business being seasonal, I would, during when it came wintertime, I'd always get a seasonal job somewhere. We met at a
I think I was 20 or 21 when we
right
met.
a vending
Yeah, right.
machine
I mean,
factory. I don't know if it was a factory or what, but
yeah.
I would drive a truck when I was, shoot, how long ago was that? That was a long time ago. Was that 10 years ago?
You want you want to know something weird? Well, not weird. Maybe maybe flattering. Is that back even when we first started working together at Catervind,
Because we would only see each other briefly a day.
Like 10 minutes, 20
Yeah.
minutes. So you would come in, kind of load that truck up and then take off.
Yep.
And but I remember even back then, and this was 10 years ago, you were always talking about self-improvement books. You gave me some books to read.
Did I back then? Yeah.
The Secret was one of them. I read The Secret because you suggested it. Because I would tell people that everyone, I mean, who worked at this place, like, just kind of was walking around like they hated their lives. Everyone was in a funk. And you would come in and you just had this like this bubbly energy because you didn't have to be there.
Yeah.
And when you don't have to be at your job, it makes everything so much better.
Dude, I've never heard it put like that, but that makes a great point. Like, yeah.
Right. I mean, you were the only one who could just leave and still not lose their house and car, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, yeah, you came in with this positive energy. And I used to tell my ex-fiance at the time, I used to tell her all the time, be like, oh man, this guy Mike, I like talking to him just because I feel better when I talk to him.
Oh man, that's cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and then I told him one time. So I guess actually one of my early role models for that would have been you, because I
didn't ask that question with that answer in mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, I read some of the books you gave me, and I was just kind of like, I want a more positive attitude, basically,
Yeah.
And that's kind of always been like my thing. Like, I'm starting to get back, like I said, so I finally built my platform, and like I'm stable now. I mean, not only am I stable with my finances, I'm stable with my home, you know what I mean? The lease isn't coming up next year. We don't have to put anything down. I'm stable with my job because, Jason Armstrong's the owner, but I'm self-employed.
Yep.
So like if I need to take a day off, I just schedule it off. I don't get wrote up. I don't have to answer to anyone.
Yep.
So I've had more freedom at this point in my life than I've had my entire life. And so now I'm starting, my next goal is to try to get back into fitness like I was when I was a teenager and stuff. Yep. But it's never for like I don't want to like just look good. I mean, I want to look good, but that's not my, my motivation. My motivation is just health.
Yeah.
And just, more internal stuff. And the same thing with being like positive attitude, like it's more just for me, I want a better, because your life is your perception.
For sure, man. That
is
tough.
I mean, that is the case though. You know what I mean? Like, some homeless person could look at my life and be like, this guy's got everything.
Yeah.
He's got a home. He's got a fiance. He's got, a good job, yada, yada. And then me in here, I'm like, oh, I wish I was 20 pounds lighter.
Exactly.
I'm negative.
When
your
you put
life
things in perspective like that, it makes it a good point. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, I've got a rough day. And then I look at somebody who's got a kid with cancer and I'm like, what are you whining at? What are you whining at? Like, come on.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. So you can be as happy or as unsatisfied with your life as you choose to be, as your perception of it, So I'm trying to choose to be happy with, if it wasn't for the way my upbringing, I wouldn't be who I am or where I'm at right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I could have felt, because, normal life, like, it's kind of weird, but like friends that I had when I'm younger, and I'm not like a successful person by any means, but I am slightly above like just certain areas, you know what I mean, than people who have went through high school. And I used to think that people who went through high school had like the, life handed to them on a golden plate, like,
for
like,
sure.
Oh man, you've got the pass, you can go to any college, like,
Yeah,
and
but
I'll see
you
them.
make some great points. It's the choices that you're making, you're choosing to be happy. You're choosing to be positive. Whereas these other people who, graduated high school, went to college, they're just choosing other talking about these guys, they're choosing not to be,
Even if they don't know they're choosing not to be, that's kind of, exactly. Because, the system kind of puts out these little honeypots and it kind of traps people in these normal lives because, you get the car that you can barely afford and you get the house that, you can barely afford. And then before you know it, that job that kind of sucks your soul out 5 days a week, you can't afford to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get once your subconscious kind of realizes that, you kind of get into that funk, of just like, this is my life
Yeah.
until I retire or die. And
100%.
yeah, and
100%
it's
agree
just
with that.
like,
And when I started this real journey of transforming myself, it was because I had like zero passion for life. Like I was just going through the motions, but on the outside it looked cool. We had nice cars, nice house, the family dog, 3 kids, hot
the
wife, like
American
everything was
dream.
perfect. But inside I was lacking everything, and I had to, once I really started loving myself and I changed my negative self-image to a positive self-image, that's when life got better. And I would go through like spurts, but I also knew that where I was at in this dark place is like, if I don't get out of this and I keep going down, it's not going to be good. So it's time to change.
Absolutely. I think it was Les Brown. He said that when things go wrong, don't go with them.
Yes,
And
that's what I asked you about, the inspirational guy, because I knew that you always mentioned Les Brown a lot, and so
I'm
I wanted to bring
huge
him up.
Les Brown. So when me and my fiance broke up, it was a really dark time, for me, not just because of that relationship failing, but, everything that I had come to associate with my life had just changed overnight. I was no longer going to be there every night with the kids. There was
Yeah.
going to be days where they were with her or wherever, and I just wasn't going to be there. That affected me. That took something out.
Mm,
And our friend group that we had, so me and my ex-fiance, we were friends for years before we ever got together.
really?
And we had a very close, we're talking like 5, 6 people that saw each other every day from like 14 still to this day.
No kidding.
And it got that realization that hit, that was when my friends are with her, they can't be with me. And when they're with me, they can't be with her. And it was just like this whole thing, everything got flipped upside down.
Mm.
And my brother actually one time, because I was just a sad sack, I was just, I mean,
Yeah.
I would sit in the couch in our place. We got this place. And so here's a funny story. So we got this, me and my brother, he's living upstairs with my parents. I just went through my separation. We're like, let's get a place to Mattoon. You would think normally that would go well, right? But me and my ex, we had no money. So I was going with no money. And my brother, he was a college student who lived on campus who had no money. So we find this house, and in this house is a complete trash hole. I mean, the person who had lived there was like this meth head who just bailed, and there was
Really?
just trash and clothes and things everywhere, and just like, so we show up, and this landlord, he's kind of like a Mattoon landlord. He owns like 20 properties, and he's like, we decided we're going to take this, but we haven't done any paperwork yet. He just gives us the keys, and we cleaned the place up, like the whole garage, in like a couple of hours. We're talking like, this place looks very good.
Yeah.
He comes back because he had 2 different houses. And actually, we were like, you know what? We want to take this other house because it had a better bedroom for one of the kids. Because even though we were splitting up and it was going to be me and my brother, it was a goal. It was like a priority of mine. I was like, we have to get a big enough house for the kids to have rooms. Like, I don't want them to be that classic. They hate going to dad's house because they got to sleep in the living room.
Yeah.
I was like, the kids are number
you.
one. You know what I mean? So I was like, it was out of our budget, but I was like, we'll make it work. And so the deposit on it was like $900 or something, and we didn't have it. And he came back over to talk to us about it, and he started looking at this house, just jaw drop. He's like, what happened? And we're like, oh, we cleaned it up because we're going to take the cheaper one. And he's like, you guys did all of this? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, I'll waive the deposit.
Really?
He's like, I tell you what, he's like, I got 3 more houses about like this who need cleaned. He's like, not only will I waive the deposit, he's like, I'll take some off of your first couple of months rent if you go clean them.
Really?
Really, yeah. So
Dude, that's awesome.
We roll our sleeves up and we go and we scrub black mold and cockroach and haul metal out, and we do that for the first couple of days, and then we were able to get into the more expensive house that we wanted, and cheaper, long enough for, then at that time we were filed taxes, and me and my fiance had split them. So I took my portion of the taxes and just paid it all towards rent because I knew I was about to start Lakeland. And that cosmetology course is 5 days a week, 9 in the morning to 5 o'clock. You know, it's a
Yeah.
full-time job. And then I worked 7 to midnight.
Really?
So yeah. And so I told my brother, I was like, hey, if you, because his school didn't start for a little while longer. I was like, if you cover the utilities, I'll pay the rent up for like a year. And, you know, that way I don't have to worry about, you know,
Yeah.
losing the home or what I'm going to do while I'm going to school. So we did that. And, you know, that was just another one of those cases of just timing, hard work, willing to do hard work.
Dude, I bet you have tons of these stories, don't you?
Yeah, not a lot of people would have been, you know, or willing to, you know, go clean up some other junkies, you know,
for sure,
house just to knock $200 off the rent. But we had, you know, we had to do that, and it worked out in that, you know, in that timing, that kind of God's timing. That, you know, had we not put that work in initially, he wouldn't have came over and maybe cut us the deals. And he liked us so much. When we left our house there, it was in perfect condition, unlike I'm sure some of the other people we'd rented to. So he actually gave us a check for a deposit, as if we had paid it cash, even though we didn't pay a deposit, we worked for it. So when we left, he gave us back our deposit, even though we did.
Kidding.
Yeah. And
dude,
he was
that's
like, no,
awesome.
Yeah.
Great story.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
There's good people out there in there. You guys, you and your brother.
Yeah, there certainly is, you know. Yeah, and you'd be surprised, awesome. You know, when you're kind of in those dark times. There was two ways to look at that situation. There was like, oh no, my life's falling apart, and now I've got to clean, you know, all this trash and stuff. Yeah. Or it's like, hey, you know, I mean, like, I've got this opportunity to just do a little work. You know, it's not costing me anything. It's just a little time and a little energy. And then, you know, I'm able to bounce back, you know, a little bit better. You know, like, you know, get a place where the kids at least had a room, and you know, they could take some of their stuff that they had already had, you know, make it feel more like a home, even though it was temporary.
Yeah.
But still,
dude, though, that's so awesome. Dude, I honor you for even being that type of father at that young age for those types of things, and just honor you as a person for where you've become in life. Like you said, you know, you may not be successful as some people, but success is in the eye of the beholder.
It definitely is, you know, and like I said, you just kind of got to look at, you know, perspective of, you know, like from where I've started, it could have veered away different. For
sure.
But, you know, like, so from where it's going, you know, like I have pretty big plans and dreams, and they don't really seem as impossible to me as they did, because I've already accomplished so many things that seemed impossible.
Definitely.
You know, just going to school seemed impossible, and I was like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
You know,
you're checking a lot of the boxes off, man.
You know, just buying a house, you know, with no, I mean, we bought our house in the middle of the pandemic, and we just did it kind of on faith that it was going to happen, and, you know, and stuff like that, you know, and just all the things, you know, that has happened has given me and my fiance just an excellent platform to kind of be able to start take our time and work on ourselves and plan our next moves. And
dude, it's incredible.
I can't speak highly enough of her either. She is wildly successful in her career, probably starting her own business eventually, you know. So, like, you know, it's just crazy awesome. How it works out. And, you know,
I love hearing it.
On another note, too, me and my ex-fiance, I don't really have much anything bad to say about her, just because we just grew apart, you know, stuff like that. But when it came to different life things, you know, our goals didn't always really jive up. You know, and me and my fiance right now, our goals are just really in sync.
That's cool.
And what really I thought was awesome too, you know, because we met in school, you know, so we're in the same field. She focuses on different areas, but, you know, we have a similarity there. And just like when we talk about future goals, they're very aligned.
Yes.
So, like, you know, it's easier for us to kind of work towards those goals, because, you know, you're not working against someone in your own home, or you're not working besides or dragging someone along.
Yep.
It's like everything we do kind of, you know, is in some way towards those goals. And that's big too for anyone that's listening to, you know. Yeah, like
I heard a saying just recently. It went something along the lines of, when you align yourself with the right people at the right time, like, good things are going to happen. And dude, that's what's happening.
Absolutely.
You know, that's awesome. Now I'm just happy that we've met. I'm glad that you took the time out of your day to join me on this, because I know that the people are going to get a lot of stuff out of this, David. So, dude, I appreciate you. I honor you. And thanks again for taking the time to hang out for a little bit.
Hey, no problem, man. I appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime.
Awesome. Sounds good. See you, David.
All right. You have a good one.